Today here with Sutej from Autograf Digital, we're going to talk about things like number one, the power of confidence. Number two, why you want to be an elephant business, not a unicorn. Number three, why building a business is just like building a house. And we're going to talk exactly about what that means. And more importantly, we're going to talk about how to prevent going down the wrong path to save yourself years of aggravation and how to fix that before you go on the journey. I'm Dennis.
And I'm Greg.
And this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast,
where we provide the tools for more profit and less stress in your business now so you can turn into a valuable asset later. Welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. I'm Greg Forzani here with Dennis Taekema, and our guest today is Sutej Batth from Autograf Digital. Now, you'll probably recognize him from a previous podcast because he gave some great AI advice for small business in kind of today's market, which was really good. Welcome, Sutej. Before we kind of get into it, let the audience know what's your business do, what do you focus on, and geographic area you cover. Like, is it physical? Can you work remotely? Is it Canada, US? Like, what areas can you cover?
So thank you for having me. First of all, again, it's a pleasure. So we're based out of Airdrie, Alberta. Autograf Digital is a creative tech studio, is how we explain it. And essentially, we aim to be sort of fractional growth and tech partners for our clients, small to medium-sized businesses, and we help them bridge the gap between these very resource-intensive softwares and platforms like SAP and Oracle, and more off-the-shelf small business solutions like Square point-of-sale system or things that are one-size-fits-all. And we help them bridge the gap by building custom solutions in between by having these pre-built modules, components that we can place across different tech stacks, customized tech stacks for our clients. So essentially that's what we do.
I love this because this is just my interpretation of, let's call it tech for just one big word. So in my journey in business life, I think it's tech's being brought into play. So whether that's software or hardware to save people time, right? I think is kind of a big one. So efficiencies, less mistakes, do the job faster, do the job of two people with one person, all that kind of stuff. And that's great. So that means that in theory, like what Dennis and I talk a lot about with clients is wages are a percentage of revenue. So if you add tech, wages will drop as a percentage of revenue. And in theory, the tech should be less than the savings. Does that make sense? So overall, between wages and tech, it should be less than what you were spending on wages, then you're saving money, or you're able to accomplish more in less time. So personally, that's kind of how I've seen it. What I love about what you do, and I think it's such an interesting conversation, is there's all this software and tech and, different applications. And I mean, AI is just a whole nother thing. Dennis and I deal with business owners every day, and you can just see they're just not able to catch up to the ability of the tech as fast as the tech is coming. And again, AI is just a whole nother conversation. We got into that in that other podcast. But I think what I love about what you just said is they got all these softwares and applications and things they're using. They're spending 2,000 hours or 40 hours a week on their business, their service or product, managing their team. They don't have time to learn all this stuff. And then they're told, go get this, go get that, go get the other thing. And they start using them, and they're using them. Like if they're anything like me, they're using them to this much of their capability, right? So I love what you said there, because you're able to take those different applications and kind of put the glue in between them. And maybe glue is the wrong word, but the build the bridges in between and fill in the gaps so that they all kind of work together, which means they can leverage it. But then more importantly, like actually maybe kind of hold their hand through understanding how to use it and how it fits in their company. I just think that's such a under-discussed or underrated service at the moment, because I mean, anybody listening to this can probably say, hey, I'm not using all that stuff to its full capability. So that's really cool.
It's tough to use it to its full capability though, because if I look at QuickBooks as a program, QuickBooks almost takes a degree to understand how that actually works. And that's just an accounting software. And then you've got trades have got 4 or 5 different softwares to pick from that they are supposed to use to access to their business. And then you start talking about marketing and people go, well, you got to have your AI clone and you got to do this and you got to do that. And by the way, you have to hire and you got it. And dude, I just want to like plumb a house or sell a widget. I don't have time to get a doctoral degree in all of this technology. And I think for a lot of people, it's easier to try to ignore it and go about life anyway than it is to try to figure out how to learn everything. Because by the time I do, it's already outdated.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly right. And I see that problem all the time with CRM systems, even, right? We talked about setting up a basic CRM system, connecting to their website. That it should be simple, right? And there are companies like Squarespace or Wix.com, for example, that let you build a website, but then you are extremely limited in what you're able to display or how you're able to use it. And then you're completely locked into their ecosystem. So if you want to then add a booking functionality later on, if you're a hair salon, you will have to go through their very limited options. So what we instead propose is taking control back of your business and of the tech that powers your business, and building it in a modular way where you build only the component that you need, and we build it around how your business operates rather than you having to fit your business around a tool that's already existing.
Boom. Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. I love that.
Well, it's what we say to clients all the time. I don't care what your bookkeeping system is. What do you actually need? Let's go back down and figure out what you need first before you go spend a ton of money on something and find out that you're trying to fit a triangle peg into an octangular hole. Like, it doesn't work.
And as an example, I mentioned Square point of sale a lot, and Square is such a great ecosystem. We work with them a lot for some of our clients to power the payment part of this whole process. For a coffee shop, for example, we will handle everything else, but except the last payment module will be Square. But their inherent business model, if you think about it, is to keep you locked into their ecosystem complete. They operate kind of like Apple of the small business world, where you get a device and it's just supposed to work. Like, you just fire it up and it just works. And it does for a big part of the business world. But then in order for them to increase their revenues and they are bundling more and more services.
Nuances. So the nuances a business need, it doesn't help.
Absolutely not, right? And they want to they want to have one solution that can be used in a coffee shop, in a barber shop, in a massage parlor, because they obviously, when they're trying to build it at scale, trying to have millions of customers, they can't have customized solutions. So I think we talked about this similar to this last time, that SAP and Oracle, these big ERP companies, are also moving towards that model, that they do not allow any type of customization at all. It's either you get the solution straight out of the box or not. That's just the direction that the industry is moving towards. So Square, similar to that, they're going to bundle a million different things, that out of which you only might need two, but you're going to be paying for all of them.
Well,
right?
it's not that unusual. Like, it's on a same note, but slightly different note. You're seeing the same thing in cars now. It's like, oh, by the way, you want the fully loaded camera, here you go. But if you want to keep those features when your lease is up, you got to pay us $5-10 a month. And by the way, you can't just select. It's like cars are moving that way. Like, everything's becoming this subscription-based service where we give you everything you don't need, but make you pay for it, because that's how we want to make our money, not necessarily what you need to survive on a regular basis. I mean, we've gone through the same thing looking through our own softwares. Do we add this one? Do we add that one? How do we integrate it? But I don't need these 7 things. I only need, it's like, remember old cable programming? You want the sports channel, but if you want the sports channel, you also got to get the Cartoon Network.
Right. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And there's so much overwhelm and confusion, right? Because of it. There's just an unlimited number of options and things you could be doing as a business owner. You don't know what's right. And by the time you've invested time and effort into setting up one platform or one system, you realize it's not a right fit. And then it's double the effort again to go off of that platform and move somewhere else again. It can be cost real money to a business.
And time. It's a real problem now. Like, I talked to somebody, I think yesterday. They need to overhaul their whole software thought. They're on an old system, and they need to put new systems in place. And again, it's overwhelming, right? They look at it and they're like, where do I even start? And then so that overwhelm word was a good one you just used.
And we talked about AI last time a lot. And I remember when about a year and a half ago, vibe coding was getting popular. Anyone could ask ChatGPT to make a task tracker or to-do list type of app. And I thought that was going to actually make it very simple to now where any business owner could just make an application for themselves. And maybe we'll get there, but just working with it ourselves, I've realized how much complexity there is really in even a basic application, a basic software. In order for it to work, and especially work at scale, it needs a lot of thought, and just AI tools aren't there. and I don't think they ever will be. So what that has led to actually is the flood of more options, way more options than we even had a year ago. Like if you could going back to a booking system, since we talked about that last time, but if you look for a booking system on Google, you'll get a million different options. And I can tell you from my own experience, having tried a bunch of them, that they are trash, most of them. They don't work and they don't integrate with anything else. And it's just, I know how confusing that will be for someone who goes down that same path, that same rabbit hole.
Well, and there's a company called AppSumo, and I love what Noah Keegan has done with AppSumo. I've gotten some really great deals there, but even on there, you see there is dozens of new softwares popping up every single month because they're promoting them. And it's like, how do you ever come down to decide what's actually good for you without having the expertise to look into it and knowing that? And I suppose that's where someone like you comes in, because that's like, it's like, okay, look, dude, all I want is a sandwich. Can you just tell me what bread I need to buy, what lettuce I need to put on there, and how I need to do this because I'm hungry? I feel like tech's the same way. It's like, I just want to send out emails. How do I handle that without having to do all the other things?
For a business, before, one additional complexity I'd like to add is that I think businesses before, maybe 20 years ago, thought of marketing as a separate thing to their day-to-day operations, or maybe the tech, like the point of sale system wasn't thought of in the same sentence as your marketing system. But now, because everything is digital and everything is social, it's a lot more aligned, a lot more integrated, just marketing and your tech. So for example, we set up loyalty programs for customers, for our clients, that integrate seamlessly with their existing point of sale system, or we might, in some cases, even design their point of sale system for them. But that loyalty card lives in customers' digital wallets on their Apple phones or Google Wallet. And for us to get that a coupon, or that to get that loyalty card, into their digital wallets, what we do now is we advertise on Instagram or Facebook an ad saying get $5 off your first visit at this coffee shop. When they click on that button or on that ad, it downloads a coupon into their Apple Wallet. When they come into the shop, the point of sale system that we have designed, either they scan it or they enter their customer's phone number. It uses that coupon, converts that coupon into a real loyalty program card. So now it's all one seamlessly integrated operation from marketing all the way down. And that's something that only works for 10% of Square's existing clients. So they don't have any reason to build that type of functionality. But whereas we can, and this is just a start, because it's all custom, we can take it into almost any direction, right?
So wait, what I'm hearing is loyalty programs becoming seamless, and no longer do we have to rely on the little tag you got to put on your keychain.
Yes, I will. I'd love to. I can share some photos with you next time. I'm actually really proud of our design team. We built these stunning looking loyalty programs for our clients, and they all exist within your Apple wallets and your Google wallets. And it's linked with your phone number. So there's no actual app. And Apple actually allows us to use a lot of the phone's native functionality, like the GPS notifications within the wallet app. So we're still able to send offers and everything to customers without actually building an app. And we can use the geolocation alert. So if you're within 100 meters of the location of their shop, how you get, if you have a boarding pass on your phone, you go to the airport, it shows up. So similar to that loyalty card pops up, and it's pretty cool. It works really well, and it's all just random tinkering with all these different APIs that were available, that we were just playing around with it, and it worked.
It's funny you're saying all of that, because it's actually making my hackles rise, because I'm like, I want to go back to a flip phone. I don't want you to know when I walk into your business. I don't want you to know when I walk into the airport and there's my thing. I just want to go back to like flip, call, put it away. Life is over. Give me back my spreadsheets and my Word documents.
I had a lot of assumptions about this as well, that who's gonna, who will sign up just to get $5 off, or who'll sign up just to get 50 points off. But the more I work with clients and we gather data, the more I realize that there's such a vast variety of people out there, and there's someone interested in what you're selling, and you can figure out a way to connect with them. Like when I talk to some of my customers who are maybe a little bit more, upscale, when I tell them that this one other client is offering one free coffee, they say there's no way that will get customers to sign up for them, but that's a completely different ICP for them. And one thing, by the way, you noticed in loyalty programs specifically, almost, I think it was 91% of all transactions that we have processed in the last year have been accruals, and only 9% were redemptions. So just something interesting that people rarely actually redeem their points, but they like being part of a community, being part of this this network. So we are focusing a lot more on these community events that if you are a member, you get access to once a quarter community hangouts and stuff like that. And that's been um, a lot more fruitful than just having points and stuff. But again, because we're doing it custom, you can play around with all of this. With if you were sticking with Square, they only have a very simple points program that's sort of built into the point of sale system, and there's only like two things you can do with it.
I wrote down a comment here saying the yeah buts. So like you said, well, there's blanket business knowledge, right? Like go get a loyalty program. Okay, so I did, but it doesn't work. Well, that's the yeah buts. It's the I got it, but the intricacies of how to apply it are usually different to everybody. Because I might have, like you said, a high-end coffee shop versus a low-end coffee shop, or a luxury car dealer versus a scrapyard dealer. They might both have loyalty programs, but the same sticker doesn't work on all brands. You have to be able to take that custom approach to make sure that you're giving your customer the best experience, not just a blanket tool that I'm supposed to apply. So it sounds like you put your business right in the middle of that. It's the, okay, yes, but you need, and then they'll take care of that for you. So that way you're not overwhelmed and you can just go back to doing your business.
That's exactly it.
So then with all that dialed in, what made you come to like a program like ours to look for help on your business side of things?
So believe it or not, it wasn't as dialed in. So even though we have only been working for maybe 6 weeks or so, maybe 2 months, it has been of immense help. And I think it was just the right timing as well. Just a quick 15-second background. So I've been working on this company, Autograf Digital, since 2020. Since in, I think, June or July of 2020 is when I sort of started this while I was still working at Deloitte. And this was during COVID times. So I was working from home. So I sort of, on weekends and evenings, I started designing websites and doing social media stuff for my clients. And over time, that grew into different offerings, and my interest grew, our team grew. But now we were at a point where I was just having a really hard time in articulating what we were really doing or what makes us different. I didn't want to come across as just another digital marketing agency that's just doing websites or running your ads for you, because what our ambitions were bigger than that, and we want to have a closer and longer lasting relationship with our clients than just a 3 to 6 month marketing engagement or something. So, and we wanted tech to be
more
a big
than
part
just
of it.
the website guy.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Or the IT guy, So it's not just marketing, but it's also not just tech. We're not just handling your emails or your servers in the back or something. Like, we're actively engaged with you and designing a customer experience that actually affects your business, that helps you grow. And then there's a lot of things around it. So I wanted to understand what would be the best way to articulate it and to position the company. And over the years, I worked with multiple marketing agencies, tried to figure that out. But I think it was always sort of attacking the symptom and never, going down to the problem. And I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Greg, actually, through a friend of mine here in Airdrie. And since then, we first talked about the financials, sort of really broke it down into the smallest chunk possible, started working on the financials and understanding what are the different departments, what are the different services within that department, and using Greg's own expertise and understanding of best practices, what clients are looking for. There was a lot of nuances that I wouldn't have understood, like when we're talking about a certain problem in our tagline, how one customer avatar might perceive that tagline versus another. Like, these sort of things I just didn't have an understanding about. And so it was immensely helpful in getting our messaging and our positioning understood, I think. And we're still at the very early stages. My goal is by early 2026 is to have like a completely, like a 3.0 version of Autograf, where we now have this new strategy, Greg, that we're working on with, blocks and stacks. And it's, and to take a step back, we just talked about marketing and tech being more intertwined. So that was where it was really helpful to have this idea that we'll go with this. Each of our service, like website, for example, building a website would be a building block, like a Lego brick. And one business might need multiple Lego bricks to make their business run on a day-to-day basis. But it's not just tech, it's also marketing. So essentially two different types of blocks. There will be either the tech blocks or the growth blocks. And the growth blocks are more just like the managed services. So we can run your PPC ads, your Google or Facebook ads for you. We can do SEO for you. So more like labor intensive things and more platform infrastructure based things. So any unique combination of those blocks will be what we deliver to you as a client. So essentially there can be an unlimited number of combinations of these building blocks. That gives me a very good understanding about how to now position the company and how to focus on, or what part of the problem to focus in our social media marketing, for example, and how to try to get new clients. So yeah, I think it's been immensely helpful.
So a friend of you suggested that you have a conversation with Greg. That conversation turned into a chance to actually examine your numbers. Examining your numbers let you figure out what exactly it is that you're selling and to what margin, as well as the different offerings that you have?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Okay. So
because it was just, sorry, Dennis, it was just such a vast variety of things that I could offer that I needed help to sort of, first of all, narrow down some of the options. And I had done some of that work already before coming in. So like we already knew I wasn't going to handle some like social media content creation for people. It's just a completely different skill. So, but then going through that exercise definitely helped narrow down even further and put it into these neat 3 or 4 buckets.
So it kind of took the emotion out of the decisions and let you make some practical decisions, not just feel-good decisions.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. That makes sense.
And we've even gotten into what's been kind of fun, I noticed, is in building that, Dennis and I call it a profit plan. So the rest of the world would say a budget on steroids. As your newer company, building that scalable path and converting the thought process from, so A, what revenue do I need to be at to validate the infrastructure I've put in place and make the profit I want to make, but then take that revenue and break that into how many customers is that with how many services, average transactions. So by doing that, it makes your path much simpler to understand, right? Because I think a lot of new business owners that are trying to scale or build, they're like, and I'm just going to pick some random numbers here, but they're like, oh, today I do 50,000 a month and I want to get to, I don't know how much, maybe 100,000. Here, wait, I'll flip a coin. I want to get to 100,000 a month. And then there's no, like, how do I get there, right?
Yeah. And that's where
I'm thinking the analogy of, I'm looking out my office window and I stare at a mountain and I think like, oh, I want to get to the top of that mountain one day. Well, there's probably 20 different paths up there. Which one am I taking? What do I got to be prepared for? What's that look like? So it helps you build like how many customers I need, how many services they're going to buy at what average transaction. You start to formulate an actual plan step by step that then links back to that message you provided, which then links to what marketing you got to do. And it just makes it all clear and way more believable, right?
Well, and to go back to your mountain analogy of those 20 paths, there's probably several that will kill you.
Okay, so it's not funny actually, but on this particular mountain, there is. Like people actually die there.
But that's most mountains, right? Like your point of the story is, well, there's 20 paths, and the assumption is, well, they all lead to the top. Well, they don't.
Yeah.
There's maybe one or two that effectively lead you to the top. The rest effectively lead you to some form of suffering you could have avoided had you not taken those paths. So what I hear you saying is being able to pull through your data allowed you to figure out the correct path without spending too much time going down the wrong ones. So what kind of big things have you taken away so far? So you say you started ripping through your numbers. What you learned through that process was to be able to define some of your programs a lot better. That's correct?
Yeah. For sure. This departments, first of all, like we just broke it down into 4 departments, 4 main buckets, and then all the services sort of went in there. And that was the first step towards understanding.
And then from there, you were able to dial in specifically what your customers need. How has that changed your approach so far in your marketing attempts then? Like, as you really dialed that in and spend a lot less money on it, you're more clear. How's that working?
So I actually completely paused my marketing since then. So we are now rebuilding everything, and starting January, we'll start advertising again. And these different blocks that we talked about, one of those blocks is our loyalty program, which we call Auto Reward. And so we've tried to build that into its own brand. So it has its own website, its own Instagram page now. So it aimed to have maybe some of these blocks that can be sold at scale, can be be marketed separately. So now we're trying to experiment with that in starting January, we will only be for now doing all of our marketing for this one block for Auto Reward. It will have its own CRM, its own sales pipeline, and it's a much easier product for us to rinse and repeat to resell, and to have a system in place, a team in place that can design all the design, all the collateral, all the promotional materials, and what the rules of the card are supposed to be, and some of the tech that's behind it. So we can be the same team that can keep doing the same stuff over and over again. So that was the first takeaway, that we need to get that down. And once that is in place, maybe by spring of 2026, then we'll start marketing some of our other products.
And it'll gives you a chance to, because in your particular case, most all the departments you sell, the different services you sell, like which are results, right? Things people need. Just about every company probably needs some portion of all of them. So if you're bringing them in for one and talking right to that one, you can actually start to expose them with the right messaging you're talking about to the other ones, right? You can help them understand, like, hey, you're buying this block that fits into this bigger journey, and let me show you how it fits in and what the other stages of the customer journey are, right? Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's a great foot in the door for us, because I recently learned this term called B2B2C, right? Where we're a B2B company, but we're providing a solution that for them is directly related to a customer. So yes, directly B2C. That there's a certain draw that businesses feel that, like, for example, if our first step in the door attempt was to pitch a back office software that helps them schedule their employee shifts better, it might not be as attractive. Whereas when they makes it easy for us to pitch, whenever the few clients that I've closed recently, I walked into their coffee shop and had a coffee card design, like a loyalty card designed and ready to go on my phone. And, I just kind of showed it to them that, oh, do you guys accept this? And some of them have been, oh, like, what is that? Because it has that kind of the shock factor. So it's a good first step in the door. And then once that's in place, then of course, we can then help you with your website, with your SEO. These are the different building blocks and the different the growth in the tech blocks, and we can help you with a lot of that, and everything will be integrated and handled seamlessly by us.
Love it.
So it's been great, and we're investing a lot of time and resources now into coming up with these the creatives for this new marketing push. I think you guys will like it.
So that actually brings up a good point. What I'm also hearing is, maybe going through this, and again, like you said, you're 6 weeks into this program, right? So it's super new. But we started with all the financials, like build again, we use the word profit plan for a reason, because it's a plan to make profit, right? Mm-hmm. Pretty self-explanatory. So build that, know the numbers. That got into a discussion of, like you said, breaking out the departments. What am I selling? Thinking from the customer's perspective, how do we break that out so they understand it? But it kind of sounds to me as I'm listening to all this, it's this process is, and maybe you can expand on this in your own words, but has maybe I think you're already a guy that has a burning fire to succeed, but maybe this has lit a bit of a spark to make the fire bigger because your confidence level's gone up because you see the path more clearly.
Absolutely. And like I was saying, I think a big part of that for me had to do with timing, for sure. I just became a dad again of a second baby.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. And there's more of a fire now. But without a doubt, just having your expert opinion and, understanding that, okay, maybe I'm on the right path, and then getting some additional refinement, some polishing around the messaging, and getting your tips that this works, but this doesn't. But just overall encouragement that I'm on the right track, that there is definitely a need for it in the market. So without a doubt, that has helped with my confidence and for sure made the flame bigger.
Awesome.
So it sounds like you were in a situation where you were growing the company. You've been at that for about 5 years. You had a conversation with a friend about the business side of things. There was something in that conversation that sparked and said, there's a lot of stuff I guess I don't know. I call it I don't call it the pickle jar problem, but somebody else called it the pickle jar problem, and I've adopted it, which is it's really hard to see the label from inside the pickle jar. You've got all the stuff that's going on around you, and you don't really know what's happening, and so you're kind of in that situation of, I'm surrounded by everything, I've got everything to do, I don't really know where to focus. You had that conversation. That conversation probably took a turn you weren't expecting, which was, let's dig into your numbers, because why the heck should I ever dig into my numbers? I know what's going on. I know what I'm charging. But that journey of digging into the numbers allowed you to say, okay, well, of all of my options, these options make the most sense based upon what the numbers are telling me. So I can get rid of a lot of the distraction now. I can focus in on what's important. That's got you laser focused on things like loyalty programs and building blocks. So then what kind of changes have you seen in your life? I mean, it's only been 6 weeks, but it sounds like your focus is more dialed. Like, what else is happening for you?
It's mostly just, yes, about our focus and our team's focus, that we are just trying not to take work just for the sake of having work. That, like, if it's just, you just need help with the Google ads or something, that I can refer you to someone else. Or if you're just looking for a website build, that sort of a one-time transaction that you're looking for, that's not really a right fit for us. So we can refer you to someone else. And I have, friends in the industry, friends here in the city that I happily send customers to all the time. But now I'm just doing that more, being very heavily focused on these two things, because I now know, I think the path forward is a lot clearer. So I can trust the process a little bit more, that, okay, if I keep doing these 3 things, that in 6 months we'll be here. And I think having that roadmap definitely helped.
So what I'm hearing from you is you stopped chasing revenue for the sake of chasing revenue.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
way more clear about what you're actually trying to achieve. And then it also sounds like in that process, instead of being disappointed or dejected about leaving money on the table, you're now more clear about what the next 6 months looks like. Yeah. Because you're no longer just, somebody's not just offering you money and you're not just taking it anymore. Now it's like, well, is this actually a proper fit versus just, I want to go plug my bank account with something that might not make me anything.
Yeah, and cash flow, of course, is still a concern for a business early on in its stage. And even though I've been doing this, on and off for 5 years, I didn't actually officially register the company until like 2020, which is when I quit my job at Deloitte, which was January of 2024. I'm about, I would say, about 24 to 30 months into the journey, really.
I was just saying 30 months in, though, and the fact that you're willing to look for help 30 months in means you're not 5 years in and having to rebuild everything. Like, this is where Greg and I probably see this a lot. Like, I've got clients who do over $1 million in revenue, easy.
I believe it.
But trying to turn that ship at $1 million in revenue is a whole lot harder than trying to turn a company around who's 25% of that or 50% of that, where you can look at things a bit more agilely. And so you're kind of in a situation of, you're 24 months in, but to go and ask for help is a huge step, because I feel like you're going to shave years off of your whole journey of building this thing.
I think then the earlier you can do it, the better. Like, if anything, when we first started looking into the numbers, I think probably everyone goes through that like, that I'm not ready for this yet, that we can look at this maybe later on, that maybe there's other problems that we need to work on first. But I now I understand that looking at that is probably a good idea before, like, to get a much better understanding. I wouldn't have done that otherwise. So I can understand that other entrepreneurs, other business owners who are in my shoes, I can understand how it might be just the default thought to just put it off for now. But I think there's value in getting to it as soon as you can, even if you're a young company.
I think there's more to that than even you're saying. Like, I think the vast majority of business owners, if their numbers aren't good, or if they assume their numbers aren't good, which probably means they're not good, or where they want them to be, then they avoid it, right? They just, so first of all, I think most people don't embrace math, let's just say, right? So then add to that, they're a business owner, they need to embrace math. But instead, they know they're not doing very well. So they just kind of, I'll put it off over there, and, maybe it'll get better. I'll go get more revenue, right? I'll go get more revenue. It'll work out. I love you brought this up, because I'm sure you see the same thing. Like, I would say to a business owner where their numbers are zero, like literally revenue is zero, and they still have expenses, they'd be like, well, I don't need to look at it because I know the revenue is zero. I'm like, no. This is actually the most important time to look at it, because then reality sets in. The numbers are zero. And then you go to the bottom and see how much you're losing. And that should spark the fire or increase the tensity to make tough decisions, make changes, figure out how to do it differently. Because if you don't, you're going to be in one of those 80% or more that fail. And I think this discussion right here is one of the big proponents of that, and people just don't realize it. Like, I think we, like you just said, encourage people, look at those numbers, even if you think they're bad, because it's going to make you do something.
One more thing I'll say is so I have a lot of friends here in Calgary that are entrepreneurs, that are business owners, but most of them came from like business families. Like, their dads were also business owners, or they had some type of operation on the side, some side hustle or something. So there was, I'm not sure if people can relate to this, but my like that was not the case at all. Like there was no entrepreneur, no business person in my family forever. Even now, like in all of my cousins and my all over the world, everyone that I talk to, no one's really working for themselves. So there is a much bigger hurdle for people like me, I think, to switch that mindset, to go from an employee sort of mindset. And I think for people like me, especially, like we need to reach out and look out for as much help and as many resources as we can. I'd say it's been a great decision for me so far.
I was gonna jump back to the numbers thing just one more time, quick, because there's some things I think and this is what I firmly believe. I don't think people avoid their numbers because they're dumb. I think they avoid their numbers because they don't understand why things are the way that they are, and they don't know how to make a difference anyway. So like you being new in this, your numbers wouldn't have been anything other than set up for accounting to do for taxation versus operations. So when you would have started diving into them from an operations perspective for the first time, I have to imagine there was some different thoughts going through your head the very first time you were told to attack that. And then the clarity that came from it. So kind of walk through that a little bit. Like you were looking at it, but you weren't really looking at it, but you were looking at it. Like what was your process before? And what was kind of like your aha moments and like, well, great, this stuff makes sense now. I'm going to keep pushing down this path.
So one challenge that I think I faced was I didn't want to rely on freelancers. About a year or so ago, I decided that I wanted to start building my own team. And what that ended up looking like was it was a lot of experimentation. The first time I was doing it too, never, not only was I bringing someone on, I had to create work for them to do something. It's just a different challenge that I hadn't tackled before. And I realized that it was really hard for me to figure out like which part of the business are they working on? Like, is this person that I'm now there? It's my VA, right? She's helping me manage my calendar. She's helping me manage some of my leads that are coming in. But is she can she also, and she's also maybe responding to some of my clients on their inquiries or any bugs that they might be facing right now. But does she, where exactly does she fit? But so the more I grew my team, that was just getting unclear to me on where that money is going. So for example, when this loyalty program that I'm talking about, in my mind, that might only cost me, let's say $100 a month, because that's maybe what the software, the tech cost is. But what I'm not thinking about is all these 10 full-time employees that I now have that are on and off supporting this platform. Like, how do I build that in here? Whereas if it was just, a freelancer that I was working with on Upwork or something, and they were only working on that one platform, on that one project, it would be easy for me. So I think it's, so that was the biggest challenge, and that I think I solved so far.
So figuring out the margin you should actually charge to make sure your overhead's effectively covered on each service.
And fully understanding what costs go into it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, and then of course paying myself, like right. That's something that I didn't think about before either. I'm sure a lot of people go through that, especially at this stage.
Well, I think a lot of people look at it from what they've been told, which is if I make enough revenue, there should be enough for me at the end of it. And if there isn't enough for me at the end of it, I better go make more revenue. And then unless they do the work that you did, which is what are my actual margins? What does this thing actually have to do? They just find that at a bigger level, there's more money coming through, but the stress is higher. They're more broke. They're not sure really what's going on. And they're trying to figure it out, where you're now going, well, that cost me a whole lot more than I was expecting it to. And I guess I better go make some adjustments, or this is going to go backwards fast. And then I have to imagine too that seeing the reality of your pricing having to change probably wasn't one of those things where you went back and celebrated. It was probably more like this is going to destroy me because nobody's going to pay it type conversation.
That's right. Yeah.
So how'd you overcome that hurdle?
So I actually had my pricing, I was charging pretty high before already. So I didn't have to change my pricing much. I think it's more just moving things around. So just sort of productizing the service and making it make sense in terms of the numbers, of course, making sure the customer is getting value out of it. But if we think of that stack before of having different building blocks, that auto reward as a block by itself doesn't make sense at that price point for that customer. That what are some of these other blocks that are much higher margin for me that maybe I could just throw in for free to increase the value of the proposition of the offer.
And you can only do that if you truly understand your numbers on everything you're selling.
Oh, exactly.
That's a good point. That's a great point. Hey, let's go back for a sec to you hit on like realizing, wow, one of my either cost of goods or expense, depending what job you're doing, is you. like the hours you put in, right? That's either a cost of goods or an expense, or you do both, which in your case, you do both. Maybe just touch on that a bit for someone listening to this that, like Dennis said earlier, just to recap, but their thought process is, I'm going to do this revenue. I'm going to pay my cost of goods, whatever those are. I got to pay my operating expenses, and knock on wood, I hope there's some money left to pay me something, right? And probably in 80% of cases, that amount that's left is less than they would pay themselves as a fair wage, which really means as an owner, they're making nothing, and as an employee in their own company, because they decided to hire themselves, whether they realize it or not, they're making less than a fair wage. So what would you say to people that just heard what I said, maybe don't even understand it because they didn't even realize it was an issue? Like they're in the frame of mind of what I just said, like, oh, I'm just waiting. If there's money left, I'll pay myself. What would you say to people that might be in that situation, like to get them to investigate it, look into it, understand how important it is, whatever, like from your perspective, because you're new in this?
I obviously didn't understand the importance of that either. I think you just kind of assume that once it works out, we'll take care of it then. Or you start integrating your personal and your business expenses too much, and it can get ugly later on. So I think there's a lot that can go wrong if you don't have, first of all, visibility to that. But then paying yourself, I think you're right. And you should at least have visibility into what you're making. If you're not making anything, at least know that I'm comfortable not getting any money out of it, and I'm comfortable working 10% of minimum wage for the next 2 years. But then at least you have some recourse or some plans of what you're going to do after. Yeah, I think it's crucial that you understand that. Now that I understand it, I am a lot more considerate of over expanding. Like, closed a couple decent sized deals in middle of this year, and I went through this growth spurt, almost hired like 2-3 new developers and brought on a couple of operations people and everything, and now understanding that I'm still not paying myself anything, that maybe that wasn't the right sequence of events, that maybe I didn't need to do that right away, and I think for me it would have helped. But now lesson learned.
It's a lesson others can learn from what you just said before they do the same thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think part of the challenge is what society rewards you for, right? Like, you got the Inc. 500, the fastest growing companies. Well, what do they determine as fast growth? Well, fast growth is revenue. So I must have to go and bring in a lot of revenue quickly, because that means I'm doing everything correct. Well, I also remind people, what else grows really, really fast? It's called cancer. If you don't treat it properly.
I use that line all the time, Dennis, that growth for growth's sake is a cancer cells ideology. And
yes.
You don't need to do that. And I would argue that there's this, maybe some of your listeners might be familiar with it already. There's this term called elephant companies. So how you can think of a unicorn company. A unicorn company is essentially a company that crosses $1 billion or 10 billion in their market cap. That's a unicorn. That's essentially what Silicon Valley companies were chasing for the last 20, 25 years, right? Facebook and then Spotify, and we can think of thousands of them. But now in this more connected world where there's a lot more interest-based economy, and we have much smaller businesses with 500,000, 1,500 followers, and there's going to be a network of all of us just trading with each other, that there is something to be said about, I think, just the big landscape of business is changing. So we are going to be operating at we're going to be collaborating a lot with people of other businesses of the same size across the network, and it's going to be more collaboration over competition. It's a completely different landscape now. So
I love this because something Dennis and I are both super passionate about, and any listener can go do their own homework on this, but there's basically 5 funds in the world that have controlling shareholder interest in like 74% of the world's, or of North America's business, give or take, right? Those numbers might be like ish. But the point is, if all of these big corporations have 74% of them owned by the same funds, then the funds are encouraging and almost kind of mandating those corporations to do what you just said, work together. And they're gaining market share at the expense of small business, which has fueled the fire for Dennis and I to try and make a difference, right? And what you're saying is, and I love that, there's a trend sitting right in front of us, or an opportunity for small business to do the same thing, right? Work together, collaborate, to gain market share as small business. And I think, in fact, if you ask kind of the average citizen, they would love to support small business because they get a better product or service. On average, the product or service is better. With small business, it is. And there's a better experience. Like, you get a better result, but you also get a better experience. And you feel good about it because you're supporting your neighbor. So yeah, I love you just said that. I think that's like a bit of a shining light at the moment with what's going on in the marketplace of business.
It's elephant companies. Essentially, like, it's idea that we're not chasing growth for the sake of growth, where we sort of work in herds, we work together, and you work at a very calm pace. Yeah, and you work at a very calm pace. Like, we're not just chasing growth, and I really I vibe with that myself, because for my company, if I can focus on bringing, let's say, one new client every month that we're working with, we're working closely with them, and our team of 5 or 6 people is interacting with this one client for 1 month, fully understanding their business. Like, that's a lot more fun and a lot better, I think, over time than bringing 10 or 15, 20 new clients on every month and then not being able to sustain it 6 months in.
Yeah, it's more like farming, right? How do I properly nurture the thing so I get the good harvest at the end of the day? But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that, well, you said 2 things. Number 1, you're more clear in your numbers now. Number 2, you signed on the big clients and you weren't clear then. I have a feeling if you could go back in time when you brought those clients on board and you mentioned this, there were things that you considered that you probably would have done differently to make sure that those funds were spent differently than just, okay, I'm going to go, I got it, it's here, let's go spend, because spend means growth, growth means whatever, and then, I'm in a situation where that's not true.
That's exactly what happened. And I'm now going to, I would change it, so many things already, but now I'm better prepared. So when I close more deals, we'll do the right thing.
Let's dive into that a bit. What would you, looking back now, I know hindsight's always 20/20, but the difference between your hindsight being 20/20 and everybody else's is that now you are actually armed with different tools, different structure, different ways of looking at things. If you could go back and talk to yourself about those deals, what would you have done differently knowing what you know now? Because you had mentioned before, you just ran out and grabbed a bunch of developers. You didn't think about paying yourself. Well, how would you have changed all of that?
I think, so I was at an earlier stage then in my business in general. So if I was in that exact same position today, what I would do instead is have a solid understanding of how long my runway is. If I wasn't going to close any more deals, how much, first of all, can this money sustain me for? And that might sound simple, but I did not do that then. Especially when you have momentum going and you're closing one deal after another, you feel unstoppable. That I'll close 2 more next week and then 5 more the day after. But when you get to the move from the sales and marketing sort of push, that sprint, to then the delivery sprint, you lose that sales momentum, and then you now are investing all of these resources into actually bringing these projects to now life. And then a lot of that has been also just because I was at an earlier stage where I still needed to build these systems and I bring these developers on. I have a much more leaner system now, I think, than I did 6 months ago. So I think the first thing I would do is have a much better understanding how long this money will sustain me for, and then play around with that sort of like a dial that, okay, if I increase my push and marketing, that bar shortens, that runway shortens, but then maybe the upside goes up, that the monthly revenue could maybe go up 4x. So I can make those decisions a lot more calculated.
It sounds like, if I were to put it in layman's terms, for, again, say somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, that sort of makes sense, but I don't really understand what he's saying. It'd be kind of like booking a road trip in a car, and everybody knows this instinctively. You got to kind of plan or budget food, right? Like, am I going to have to stop and eat, or am I taking food with me? Because then don't have to stop. Gas. When we go to our cabin, man, like, our gas mileage not pulling our trailer is literally 3 times better than pulling our trailer. It's a completely different freaking plan. Like, completely different. Like, when we pull the trailer, I got to stop every 2 hours to get gas, or hour and a half. When we don't pull the trailer, I got to stop like every 3 hours, let the dogs pee. It's a totally different plan. So, but that's a really good probably analogy to what you're talking about. Everybody kind of actually does understand the concept in life. They just haven't applied it to business. And to Dennis's point earlier, they don't know how to maybe apply that. And that's what all this budgeting and numbers and dissecting we've done together has allowed you to do, plan that road trip properly, which I love. Yeah. And hopefully maybe that simplifies it for a listener, because otherwise it can sound intimidating, right?
And as I think I'm just getting started, I'm realizing that there's a lot more work to be done. There's a lot of unknowns that
Right.
you know what you don't know, and then you don't know what you don't know. So there are a lot of unknowns that are now coming to light, and it's a process. So we'll keep working on them and get to
I think it's like a hike you start and you're like, oh man, I want to get there to the top. And you get up there and you realize that's not the top of the mountain. That's just like a ledge. It's like, oh shit, there's another.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
and then I get to the top of that one. And then you get up there and it's another ledge. But at each spot, you can turn around, look at the view and say, wow,
Yes.
I'm so much further ahead, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great analogy.
Well, what I like about what you're saying and the fact that you're new into this, it's a lot like building a house. What's the most boring part about building the house is generally the foundation work.
Mhm.
You take a look at the foundation work, and I've got a client who specifically does basement foundations, and there's two attitudes between building a foundation. And number one is I'm here to dig a hole, and number two is I'm here to build a house. Well, the guy that's digging the foundation, who's there to build the house, is going to dig that hole differently than the guy who's just there to dig a hole. And if you're there to build that foundation, well, then when you're digging that hole, you're going, okay, no. I have to dig this hole because the next step is concrete. And if I don't have this hole properly, either the concrete's going to be crap or the holes are going to fall in, and then the house isn't going to work. So you've taken the time to do what's the messy stuff, the not fun stuff. I got to go dig in the dirt, make sure I have a proper foundation hole. So that way, when I put in the concrete, I know that foundation's stable. Once that foundation is stable, well, now I can go get more revenue. I can go get more clients, which means I can start adding walls to this thing. But you even taken it one step further is, in my opinion, by digging out the plan and looking at your runway time, you've decided, am I going to build a small single family home or am I building an apartment building? Because again, those foundations are completely different from where you start. And it is a lot harder to go build an apartment building on a single home foundation than it is to start with the plan from the beginning.
You're absolutely right. And that's the best way I've heard it put. And I think it was, I had to do all of this experimentation at this earlier stage of the business. So it's anyone who's in a similar position, I would recommend to go through it as soon as you can, rather than learning a bunch of stuff and then having to unlearn all of that. Having to build a foundation for an apartment, trying to build a house on it or something after.
Yeah. And then you can never build the apartment properly.
Right. But I think it also goes back down to, you mentioned the comment about not being able to pay yourself. One of the exercises you've probably gone through is setting up your personal lifestyle budget to find out what you want. Well, you might be happy living in a single family home, and you might want to build a single family home type business. Or you might be the guy that wants to go and challenge Elon Musk. Well, each one of those has got different foundations to start. So I'm going to assume you got to be clear about what you're looking for before you start digging that hole. And how do you do that? If you don't do what you said, try a bunch of different things, but then look at the structure of what you're trying to build.
Exactly. Yes. Try as much as you can. I think there's nothing else that might be better.
It's funny. On a slightly different note, my advice to young people coming out of high school has always been the same thing, and everyone gets mad at me for it, which is jump jobs every 6 months. They're like, what do you mean jump jobs? I'm like, every 6 months. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're trying to be a plumber, an electrician, work at a retail store. Every 6 months, jump it until you find something that you're like, after 6 months, you're like, wow, it's only been 6 months. And I think business is kind of the same thing. Like you said, you tried a bunch of different things, but then you looked at the numbers, dialed it in and went, okay, of all of these things, these ones are going to get me that way faster. And you rebuilt your foundation based off of that. Or at least you're starting to.
And if you're looking to then sell this house or this apartment to investors or to rent it out to people, it would be helpful if you have proper documentation of the plumbing and of the wiring and everything. And as especially in my space and in a software space and in the digital space, if we have a proper production pipeline ready of how first of all how we attract a customer, how we acquire a customer, to then how we deliver it to them, and how then we keep them paying us every single month. If that was the full pipeline of our business, like that is, if the more efficient we can have that and the more seamlessly it runs, the more oiled that machine is, the higher the multiplier that might be for selling the company. Maybe it'll be 5x our annual revenue versus 10x our annual revenue, or whatever the actual numbers are. But it's the better we can have that overall system, the documentation of the plumbing, the wiring, and everything, the better your enterprise value as a company.
It's really hard to sell the 2,000 square foot home that looks like it's been taken over by a hoarder. Then it's to sell the 2,000 square foot home that's got that really nice, clean environment and a nice kitchen and proper wiring.
So Sutej, I do remember when we talked about like, what do you want your business to be worth? I remember our initial conversation around that. And I think what got me really excited about working with you, there was various reasons, but one big one was you're fairly aggressive on what you want, which is awesome. Like for me, that's exciting, right? Like you want to win a championship or a gold medal. I'm like, perfect. So before we met, kind of what was your thinking around that? And then going through the process we went through, did that change? How to change?
So you're right. I've been ambitious. I guess, like most entrepreneurs, some sort of a chip on my shoulder, a lot to prove wrong, I guess. But there is still a lot of doubt, right? And any entrepreneur's journey, on anyone's journey, right? Whether you're becoming a doctor or anything, I'm sure you'll have times of doubt, self-doubt. Am I crazy? Am I delusional? Can this happen? But just having some sort of support in the form of a mentor, of someone who has seen multiple other businesses go through these similar phases, the similar seasons, and has had involvement with it yourself. Like I was saying earlier, just having that sort of that pat on the back that, yeah, you're on the right track, like keep going. But by the way, you got to adjust this, you got to fix this. And what the hell are you doing here? Like, this is not how this should be. We're aligned on our mission, that we're on the same page, that, okay, this is where we're going. And that definitely increased my confidence without a doubt. But I'd say I've been pretty ambitious for a while.
It's good.
Well, I remember the first time you told me the number, I was like, nice, he's ambitious.
Well, and like what you said, right? Every great team has got somebody in their corner directing them on how to perform better. And I think the stuff that we walk into and we walk clients through, and you've seen it for the first time, feels unconventional because we're not just jumping straight into let's go sell more. It's let's go back, take your idea, put the actual foundation under that idea. You then take that information and go, okay, well, how do I now apply that to my next set of goals, which you've done? Which for some people then, if they're not wired for business, would shut them down because it feels impossible. For guys that are, it goes, now I have a plan. Now I have a path. I know that next thing to attack. I know who to say no to, which is just as important as who you say yes to. And it actually makes it's a harder journey, but in a lot of ways a more fulfilling journey, because you know that you're going to get to the top of the mountain and not just end up eaten by a bear because you went left when you should have gone right.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Just sort of continue that conversation. I think like what Dennis and I try to do with clients is where does a client want their business to be worth? What's that end goal? Which could be a pie in the sky number, could be a number somebody else gave them, could be a number they thought of. I mean, who knows where they're getting the number from? But then it's about working the plan backwards. Where does the company, let's say, hey, I want it to be worth this much 10 years from now. It's working it backwards as to where does it need to be 5 years from now to reach that goal? Where does it need to be 3 years from now to reach that goal? Where does it need to be 1 year from now to reach that goal? And tangibly getting into like average transaction revenue, margins, operating expense percentages, like all those kind of things. Like if we know all those numbers and we know what those numbers need to look like at each of those steps, then we're on the path to reach that number. We've spent some time on that. We haven't dove into that as deep as we will, but from your experience so far, maybe how's that changed your confidence level or clarity, and how would that change that to somebody listening to that?
So maybe it was a bit of an easier transition for me because I understood that, like, that fundamental concept in my life a lot more than I remember having arguments with my friends about this, that as I was quitting my job, they were saying that, or people, well-wishers, they would say that, are you sure this is the right move? But my argument was always that I want to first think about what my ideal life is like how many hours am I working a day? How many hours how am I working from my home office? Am I traveling? And how many trips am I taking a year? First, I want to start with that and then work my way back on what type of career can make that happen, rather than thinking of it the other way around. So I think I understood that concept pretty well. And actually, I more of a practical application, back in 2018, 2019, I got taste of, some nice luxury hotels and properties. And I wanted to travel, take my wife after we got married. And that was my goal, that I'm going to travel in first class, in business class, and stay at the nicest, most expensive hotels around the world. But I did not have the money. So how am I going to do it? So then I spent the next 18 months or so trying to figure that out. In 2021 November, my wife and I went to Europe for 2 months, and we spent 1.6 million points, which is how I made it all happen. We flew first class everywhere, Emirates, KLM, Lufthansa, and stayed at the nicest Ritz Carltons and St. Regis. So not because I didn't never even step foot in one of these places before, but so I was familiar with the concept that if you set that goal, that you can figure out a way to make it happen. But from a business standpoint, when we started talking about looking at those numbers, and you're right, we haven't talked about it in as much detail, but still having a goal, for example, for what we want the numbers to be at the end of the year 2026, and then working our way back from there, that just means 1 or 2 new clients this month, and then 1 new client for this other department this 1 month. So it's a lot more trackable and manageable. And we can actually rate it whether we succeeded or not. But did we hit 2 new clients this month or not?
Right. Did we hit that mile marker and then the next mile marker? And then, yeah. Thank you, Sutej. Thoroughly enjoy speaking with you. This is a second podcast, but love the conversation. I strongly believe listeners will get some light bulb moments out of these discussions, which I think is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so our producer always sends a couple of off-the-cuff questions at the end of the podcast for each of us to answer. I'm going to read them, and on my screen, left to right, starts with Sutej, so I'll start with you. First question. What's your favorite music genre, and what song do you crank up when nobody else is in the car?
Maybe your audience might not be able to relate with me here at all. I almost listen exclusively to Punjabi music. So Punjab is the region of India where I grew up in, and it's very popular. It's one of the biggest exports from India is the Punjabi music, especially. We make up 2% of the population of India, but it's like 80% of the music that comes out of there. So it's one of the hundreds of languages, but we're fun-loving people. So we love our music, we love our parties. So I made this decision consciously a few years ago that I'm surrounded completely by language English in my work, in my professional life, in my social life, that I needed some sort of an anchor to hold me down with my roots. So I remember making that conscious decision that I'm going to try to listen to exclusively Punjabi music. And nice. I try to do that when I can. And there's one artist, Sidhu Moosewala. If anyone knows, they'll understand him. But he's a legend. He recently passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so he's old. He's
actually 31 years old when he was killed. So he's a rapper.
Wow.
Yeah,
he's the Punjab version of Tupac.
Actually, that's exactly how he described himself.
Wow, that's cool. Very cool. Dennis.
Depends on the mood. Some days it's country, some days it's worship gospel, but when I'm snowboarding, it's almost always heavy metal. So it depends completely on the mood that I'm in. And occasionally it has to be the real Slim Shady too. So I got a massively eclectic musical taste.
The real Slim Shady. For me, I would say the same thing as Dennis. It depends on the mood, but my most go-to for sure would be a rock. For sure it'd be AC/DC, like Back in Black, or You Shook Me All Night Long, or whatever, Thunderstruck, those kind of songs.
Highway to Hell.
100%. Yeah, or that. Right. Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform, and leave a comment or review if you're feeling generous. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, take care.